This is the Day of Battle podcast. I'm Joe Hayes. Several episodes ago, I discussed what happened to me in Ramadi, Iraq in 2004. For a little bit of a recap, I was wounded in action. I lost my point man on my fire team. My best friend was seriously wounded. And then me and another team leader, a good friend of mine, were both injured by the same hand grenade. If you haven't listened to that episode, I encourage you to do it. It's the Battle of Ramadi, and some serious things happened that day on April 6, 2004. And so after being wounded, I was medevaced all the way back to the States. And then I was faced with a decision. I had all this shrapnel in my body, in my left hand, my arm, my shoulder. I'd almost died. I needed that shrapnel taken out. And when I went and I saw the surgeon down at Camp Pendleton, I told him, leave it inside me, put me through physical therapy, heal me back up, because I'm going back. I don't have time for a surgery. And he told me that I was crazy. But he was a pretty cool guy, and he made it happen. And so I went through all the physical therapy, and, that was a lot of fun. I got a chunk of metal stuck in my wrist. It was a mess. I had made this choice to go back, and truth be told, I had a lot to lose. I had a mother and father. I have 5 brothers and sisters, and within 1 week of being home, after being wounded, I was engaged to be married. I guess you could say I figured out what was important, and I took care of it. And so now being engaged and having a marriage date set, well, what am I going to do? It's time to get back in combat. And what I had gone through over in Ramadi so far had really changed my life. I was definitely feeling the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder. I was extremely traumatized by what had happened. And I'm not saying it with a victim mentality. I'm saying my body was shaking hardcore. I was going to sleep, and when I would start to doze off, my body would violently jolt and shake because my brain was seeing a hand grenade roll up to me and explode. And that explosion in my dream, as I'm dozing off, would shake my entire body. And I would wake up. And I was experiencing those things that soon after combat. And there I am back at Camp Pendleton, healing up, going to physical therapy, and the news coming back from Ramadi every day was, I've got buddies dying, I've got buddies being wounded. And I remember just the odd feeling of the fact that I could go to In-N-Out Burger, a few miles away from base, and enjoy myself, or go spend time with my fiance and enjoy myself, when the best friends in the world that I have are getting in a gunfight, maybe at that very moment. And I wasn't okay with that. And that's the emotion and decision making that went into that choice that I made to return to Ramadi. And I'm going to tell you, it's not an easy decision. It was the toughest decision that I ever made in this life. And I knew that I had a lot to lose, including my life. And I honestly believed that just based off of what had happened to me already and what was currently going on over there at the time, I didn't think I'd make it home. I thought that I would die there. But I was willing to still go because it mattered. I knew my buddies needed me. I knew it wasn't all okay over there. I had to go. It was my job. I'm a United States Marine. I'm trained for war. And there's a war going on. What am I doing sitting back in the rear? Enjoying myself. I felt so out of place. And was I scared of dying? Sure I was. I didn't want that to happen. I wanted to enjoy my life. But it was time to go get it on. As the days passed on and my departure date came closer and closer, there was definitely a pit in my stomach that was growing, because I knew that I was risking everything to go back. It was my friends that I cared about. It was the mission that I cared about. And then I think it was just the sheer honor and integrity of myself that pushed me back, because I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror and know I was too scared to go back. I knew that I had to do it just to live with myself for the rest of my life. And I don't put that on anyone else that ever had that decision or choice to make. It was my decision, my choice, my personal feelings and beliefs. And I'm really glad that I made that decision. But I can tell you it was a tough one. Because after you've been blown up and you've lost guys around you, and then you're already back in the States, it'd be really easy to just ride it out like that. And who's going to fault you for that? Nobody. I'd already done my part, but I was not done. The first time I went to Iraq, I remember just the sentiment that we all had. We were so excited as Marines. We were going to war. We'd been cheated out of the first war, the initial invasion, and now this was our time. And not too much bad was going on over there to where we thought any of us were going to die. We were pumped up and excited. And I remember that day that we were deploying from Camp Pendleton and getting ready to hop on the buses and all of our gear stacked out there. And our families are there, you know, girlfriends and wives and moms and dads and brothers and sisters. They're all there saying goodbye, and everyone had a smile on their face. No one was crying. No one was upset. And then fast forward to this day that I was departing with a tiny group of Marines. One Marine was going back with me, and then several others were going for the first time. And I had all these other Marines around me that knew me, and they'd been wounded and medevaced back home. And I'm standing there in this group, and I'm saying goodbye to my mom and dad, to my fiance, to my brothers and sisters, to these other Marines. You know, we're hugging. There's some smiles, but it was a very sober day for all of us because we all knew what it could cost me. And I'll never forget, I was keeping it all together. And then I got to my younger brother, Andrew, who was, I think, 11 years old at the time. And I got to Andrew, and I went to go give him a hug. And you know, there I am, his 21-year-old big brother that he looks up to so much. And Andrew, he looks at me, and I just saw his eyes well up with those tears. And then he turned away, and he started walking back towards the back of the parking lot. And he just couldn't take it. He didn't want to say goodbye to me. And I just grabbed him and I hugged him. And when that happened, I don't think there was a dry eye left in that group of my family and those Marines. And we hopped in this little tiny van. And there I am with one of my good friends, a staff sergeant of Marines, a man that I really respected. And there he is, and his eyes are starting to sweat too. And it was just something that choked all of us up because of the potential cost of what I was embarking on, and I didn't have to do it. And so why am I telling you all this? Am I trying to toot my own horn? Am I trying to tell you about how brave and bold I was? No, it's not. That's not me. Because I can tell you, I was scared. I was absolutely terrified at the possibilities of what could happen to me over there. And I didn't want to die. I didn't want to lose my parents, my brothers and sisters, or my beautiful fiance, who is now my wife and has been for almost 17 years. I didn't want to lose those things. But I guess it was something else inside of me, and that's this, that the failure that I experienced in being wounded, and I don't mean a failure in a negative, dishonoring sense. I just mean from the fact that I got wounded and the enemy got me, okay? They got me. And that does equal failure. And for me, I chose that it was not going to be final. There was some insurgent over there I don't know if he ever made it out of that firefight alive, the one that threw that hand grenade at me. But he probably thought he got the best of me that day, and that he got rid of me forever. And guess what? He was wrong, because I came back. My failure was not going to be final. And there's one other thing with that. I was not alone. I knew that God was with me. God had shown me a glimpse of himself when I was wounded. Because by every calculation, I should have died that day. I was hit by a hand grenade. It should have entered through an artery in my arm. It very well could have impacted my armpit and gone into my heart. It could have hit me in the head. I had so many projectiles fired at me that day. I should have been dead. But God delivered me. And he made it very clear to me that day that he decides who lives and who dies. It's not up to me. There's nothing that I can do to escape the reality of his sovereignty over my life. That he was the reason that I was still alive. It wasn't my doing. It wasn't the great moves that I had made out there on the battlefield. It was him protecting me, putting his hand upon me, having his angels surround me. It wasn't anything that I had done. Because there was so much that I could have done different or better. But it didn't matter. Because he was in control that day. There's a good verse in Psalm 34, verse 7, I would encourage you to look at and make this part of something that you meditate on, maybe over the next week. It says, "The angel of the Lord encamps around all those who fear him and delivers them." The angel of the Lord is not just an angel, because there's probably millions and millions of angels. The angel of the Lord is Jesus Christ, the second person of the Trinity, God himself. It's essentially saying that God himself encamps around all those who fear him and delivers them. Can you imagine just the reality of that? Here we are, just these lowly people, and he wants this contact with us. And, if you remember back an episode or two in this podcast, we talked about Peter and the experience that he had when God restored him to himself after Peter had denied him 3 times. And what do you see Jesus doing? You see Jesus on this beach cooking up some fish at a campfire. Essentially, you have the same situation in Psalm 34 where Jesus Christ is encamping around all those who fear him and delivers them. And in a similar way, Jesus is in a small camp setting on this beach, offering a meal to Peter and restoring his soul. That is something that you can take comfort in. This verse is not for everyone, though. It doesn't say that the angel of the Lord encamps around all. It says that the angel of the Lord encamps around all those who fear him and delivers them. Those who fear the Lord will have this contact with the angel of the Lord, with Jesus Christ. Those who fear the Lord will have that meal of fish at that campfire on the beach with Jesus. That is the closeness you get, and it's only gained through fear of the Lord. Does that mean that you are afraid of the Lord? No. It means you recognize exactly who he is, his sovereignty over your life, and you put yourself in willing submission to him, where you say, he is the king, I am the servant. I will obey him, I will respect him, I will put myself in service to him. That is the fear of the Lord. And we're told that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. When you do that, wisdom begins. Wisdom cannot begin without the fear of the Lord first taking place in your life. And this is something that we all do have access to. But this access is only granted to those who fear the Lord, and that he does deliver them. And when you have this fear of the Lord, it's funny. It's interesting because you have a fear of the Lord and you lose your fear of everything else. Instead of me worrying about, well, am I going to die over there? Yes, I was concerned about it, but I wasn't terrified in fear over it because I was living in the fear of the Lord. And I'm not trying to overly spiritualize my mindset. I want to be realistic. But after that experience in Iraq, I knew without a doubt who controlled my life or death. And I just decided I'm not going to worry about it. When I got back later on, I remember going out into firefights. Like, it was ongoing action out there. We're loading up in the back of Humvees to go get some. And I would have a grin on my face. And I remember another Marine of mine asking me, Joe, what's wrong with you? Like, you excited to go do this? And I was like, yeah, I am. I want to go get some. Because I knew who was in control. And I knew there was nothing I could do to change that. And I accepted it. And that comes from a healthy fear of the Lord. And I wanted to go do what Marines do. But if you want the angel of the Lord to encamp around you and deliver you, you have got to have this fear of the Lord. You have got to lower yourself and submit yourself to his will. We see a picture of this in the Gospel of Luke. In Luke chapter 7, starting in verse 36, Jesus is in this situation where he is at the house of a Pharisee. That's one of these high and mighty religious leaders of the day. And Jesus is eating with this man. They're at the dinner table. And as they're sitting at this table, a woman comes up behind Jesus. And she has this alabaster flask of this sweet-smelling oil. It's a high-dollar scent. And it says that she stood at his feet, behind him, weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. And she kissed his feet and anointed them with the fragrant oil. And she is weeping, shedding tears over his feet, wiping his dirty feet with her hair, and then pouring the sweet-smelling oil on his feet. And this was something that was expensive. This was not just run-of-the-mill fragrance. This was something that cost a lot of money. And what you see is this woman pouring herself out to Jesus. But she is not just an ordinary woman. Because this Pharisee that Jesus is having dinner with, he notices what's going on, and he says something to himself. It says, this man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. I think that the intention here is that this man is thinking to himself and saying to himself quietly, I can't believe Jesus is letting this happen. And if he were this great prophet, he would know a little bit more about her because she's a sinner. And I believe that the implication is that she's a prostitute. She is an outcast. She is looked down upon. She is not held in high esteem whatsoever. This is someone who has thrown their life away and done whatever it takes to keep going on day to day. But that's not where the story ends. If you pick it up in verse 40, it says, and Jesus answered and said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. Simon replies, Teacher, say it. And Jesus says, there was a certain creditor who had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. And when they had nothing with which to repay, he freely forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which one of them will love him more? So essentially, Jesus says, let me ask you a question, Simon. there's two people that owe another man money. One owes 500, the other owes 50. He forgives them both. Which one of those guys that he forgave the debt is going to love him more? And he gets the correct answer and he says, I suppose the one that he forgave more. So the guy that owed 500. And Jesus says, you have rightly judged. And then he turns to the woman and says to Simon, do you see this woman? I have entered your house, but you gave me no water for my feet. But she has washed my feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. You gave me no kiss, but this woman has not ceased to kiss my feet since the time I came in. You did not anoint my head with oil, but this woman has anointed my feet with fragrant oil. Therefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven. For she loved much, but to whom little is forgiven, the same loves little. This woman has the fear of the Lord. She knows who the king is. She knows how much she doesn't deserve what he offers, how she doesn't deserve to be in his presence. And what she does is she gives not out of her reserves. She gives all that she has. She pours out not only this expensive oil that must have cost her a fortune, but she washes the dirty feet of Jesus. Please imagine walking around everywhere on unpaved streets with no sewers, and you're wearing some sort of sandal. And imagine how dirty your feet would be. And she is washing his feet with her tears, her hair, and this oil, because she is putting herself in submission to him. He owns her. She has given everything to him. And Jesus tells this man that because her sins are many and she's been forgiven much, she loves more. And then he turns to her and he says, your sins are forgiven. This woman, she knew that she was a failure. She had completely screwed up life. She was an outcast. She was someone of no reputation other than a bad one. She didn't want any notoriety. She didn't want recognition. She just knew that she was a failure, but it wasn't going to be final. And she only had one chance. Her one chance was Jesus. And really, we are all in that same situation. It just comes down to, do we recognize it or not? Every one of us are failures. I've talked about the failure of being wounded, or I wish I would have done better in Ramadi, but that I couldn't let that be my last day. Failure is not going to be final. And you see the same thing throughout Scripture over and over and over again. That there are these men and there are these women that are recorded for us for our own good, and they failed, but it wasn't final. That wasn't their last day. This woman is written about because she gives us hope. How many of you out there know that you are a failure in life? Maybe you are not the most faithful of people. Maybe it's faithful to your wife, faithful to your family. Maybe you have had moral failure and you know that you could have done better. And it just leaves you feeling worthless, doesn't it? What do you think this woman felt like? I think she felt horrible. She felt like the king of all failures. And it's evidenced by the fact that she's down there on her hands and knees, weeping at the feet of Jesus. She's weeping. This other man that he's sitting there having dinner with, he should have been weeping. Because look at the pride of this man. He's sitting there saying to himself, I can't believe Jesus is letting this woman anywhere near him. If only he knew what she had done. If he were really a prophet, he would know. The pride of this man. The judgment of this man. And I guess if you think about it, are we that man? From time to time, yes, we are. It's easy for us to drive down the road and look at someone to our left or our right and say, well, at least I'm not that guy. Jesus loves me, but that guy over there, he doesn't deserve anything. I don't think so. Jesus says, to whom much is forgiven, much love is returned. The devotion of this woman is going to be at a high level because she knows where she came from. You see this in the life of Peter. He failed miserably at the arrest of Jesus and the trial. Can you imagine denying Jesus Christ publicly like that and having to live with yourself and having to look Jesus in the eye a week later after he's resurrected from the dead? But was his failure final? No, it was not. Peter lived to fight another day, didn't he? And he went out like a warrior for Christ. Every one of us are going to have our failures in life. Many of us have already had them. We're experiencing them. We're living them right now. But the angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him. Fear the Lord. Submit yourself to him. Put yourself subservient to him. The Lord goes before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. He has your 12, and he has your 6.